Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Stephanie, and I am the executive assistant here at SmartSimple. Today with me, I have my colleague, Mark, who will be taking us through the high-level items on our March 2023 upgrade. Two quick reminders before we start. First, this webinar is being recorded, and afterwards it can be found on our socials, as well as our attendees will be receiving a copy to their emails afterwards, so you do have an opportunity to rewatch the content. Secondly, we will be taking questions at the end, so please use the Q&A feature at the bottom to pop your questions in there. And with that, I'm going to head this over to Mark. Please take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. I'm really happy that everyone's joining us here today. As we said, it's March 2023 upgrade. What I'm going to talk about can be found on wiki.smartsimple.com under upgrades. All right, so the first thing to note is that this upgrade, the key release for this upgrade will be March 9th. You can see all of our upgrades listed here. They happen every 4 months, so 3 times a year. Depending on your hosting scenario or situation, you may get this 2 weeks later. For example, our managed dedicated or a lot of our European clients, they will get the upgrade 2 weeks after the key release. The release is on your backup. So you can at any time go into the backup 2 weeks prior to the upgrade and test it out and see how any of these changes are going to affect you or how they will look. So again, it's already been applied to the upgrade, onto the backups. March 9th will be the key release. Most of the people will get on the 23rd. A video will be forthcoming. So without any further ado, let's jump in and talk about what's going to be in this upgrade. So the first thing, and hopefully you've received multiple communications about this, is that we're really trying to increase our security posture within our systems for all of our clients. So what that means is, first off, is I want to talk about multiple factor authentication. So typically when you log into a system, you put your username and your password in. But then after that, there's an option to have an additional authentication option. So let me show you what we've got here and what's going to happen. So if I go into my security, password activation policies, and I scroll down here, you can see that we have this section called multi-factor authentication. So this is something beyond my username and password, something I have. The first option here is the time-based one-time password. So what this is you would install an authenticator app on your phone, for example, and it would give you a code. So after you enter your username and password, you would enter the code off of your cell phone, off your authenticator app. The second option is roles with verification via email or SMS. So what this one would be is after I log in with my username and password, I would be sent an email with the verification code that I would have to get from my email, and then I would just enter that code. The SMS is also available, but there's a fee associated with that. So if you're interested in that, you would have to reach out to your account manager, and they can give you pricing around what the cost would be for SMS. So if by default, everyone will get the email. So what's going to happen on this upgrade is if this input right here, roles with verification code via email, is empty, the upgrade will apply the everyone role so that everyone will have to enter a verification code. Now, if this is something that you don't want, or you want some other set of roles, what we're recommending that you do is before the upgrade, just put the roles that you want in here. If there's a role in here, then there will be no change. So anyone who leaves this blank will get everyone, and you can change it after the fact. But if you have specific roles that you only want to get this, then just put those roles in there and there'll be no change for you. Now, because there's 2 roles here, let's say I'm a user that has both a role that's both for this and the time TOTP and one for this. What's going to happen, as it says here, is the top one, the time-based password, will take precedence. So if I have both of these roles, when I log in after I do my username and password, I'm only going to have to use my authenticator app. I won't have to do an email in addition to. Now, for some people, you may not want to, once they've done this verification code once, you may not want to ask them again for a while. You might want to give them a bit of a reprieve, in which case you can turn on this here called Enable Trusted Device, and you can set the amount of days. So basically, the way I have this set is if someone comes in, every 30 days, it'll ask them for that email verification code again. Now, there's a few things just to note about this, and then I'll move on, and we'll answer all the questions at the end too. First off, what I highly recommend is when these emails get sent out, they get sent out from an email address. So I'll show you what we really recommend doing. If I go to communications and email options, there's an option here to enable the default from address. And whatever you put in here will be the email address it comes from. So I highly recommend that people use this or put this in, especially if you have an SMTP relay or something like that set up. And if you do have an SMTP relay, you have to make sure that it allows emails to come from this location. Speaking about SMTP relays, the other thing is the backups and your tests, they all can send emails, these types of verification code emails, not all emails, but the verification code emails they can send. Now, if it's not going through your SMTP relay, what you probably want to check is that you've allowed those IPs. And so typically, if you don't allow the backup IP to go through your SMTP relay, then that would stop it from sending. The verification codes don't show up in the message queue, but they are sent. So just be aware of that. And if for some reason it's not setting for you, just reach out to our support, because perhaps you have a load balancer or something on there where you're not aware of all the IP addresses that are related to your backup. The next thing I wanted just to point out is for our clients that are using single sign-on or SSO. Wrong one. I want that one. Let me just go show you where that's configured. So if I was doing on the integrations here, if I had single sign-on, on the single sign-on, there is a setting right down here to bypass multi-factor authentication. So if you have a single sign-on integration, you may want to make sure that that is checked, because since you've already authenticated through your single sign-on provider, you probably don't want them to enter an MFA in addition. So that's there. Okay. Hopefully that explains it. I guess I'll just recap it one more time, because I know it's a lot of information. If I come into security, password activation policies, if this setting right here is empty, it gets changed to everyone. If there's at least one role in here, there'll be no change for you. And of course, after the fact, you can also change it at will. It is your system. You can change that however you see fit. All right. So some other things are going to happen. Again, talking about security, we have a system security summary where you can go and see at any time if there's anything that's been flagged by the system as possible a security concern. What we've added is the ability to add notes to this. So if something does get flagged, I can say maybe the reason why we have configured it this way, or how we plan to remediate it, or when this will be addressed, or whatever notes you want, you can just kind of put in here now. And if you click on the edit, you can see a history of all the notes over time. So that's available for any flagged items. The next thing is the global administrators. So global administrators like myself are very powerful and have a lot of abilities within the system. And as such, you really should periodically review who has global administrator access to your system, and possibly remove those access from those people if they no longer need it. You can see that list in the system security summary, also in the system summary. And if you look at this last column here, access type, when it says user, that means that this user has global admin access currently. If it said no access, then even though they were assigned as a global admin, they still don't have any access, so that's okay. But you really want to make sure that you're reviewing that list periodically and removing those permissions for people. While I'm at it, I forgot to mention this, but I just want to mention one more time. Some people might be thinking, well, why would I use the time-based one-time password over the verification via email? Typically, what I would recommend to people, and so I'm going back to this, is that this would be for someone internal like myself. I'm a global admin, I'm going in every day. I'm going to use an authenticator app on my phone. So I would put my role in here. Whereas someone maybe is a reviewer or someone coming in a little less frequently, I would put them more in this role. Maybe they're external. So just in case you're wondering when you would use them, but the only change happens to this one right here. One more thing I also forgot, I'm just mentioning it now, is that in one of the service packs a fair bit ago, we changed the way the one-time password is reset. So you reset it on a person's profile. There's a really good article here. You just look at this that explains all how to set this up, how everything works. So I highly recommend going here because you can see all the different screens, how this works, what we recommend. It's all in there. So I'm not going to belabor that, but just to go back to that. Moving on. Reports. We now have the search reference on reports. So this was always on custom fields, but we've extended it now to reports. And what this really is sometimes maybe I'm going to go modify a report and I'm not sure where it's in use. You know, is anyone using this? Is it still valid? You know, if I make a change, is that going to affect anything? And so what you can do is go up here to the search reference when you're in a report, and then you can see where it's in use. Is it in a shortcut? Is it in a portal? So you know that you're affecting something that's live and being used. The same thing can be found on custom fields. Next thing I want to talk about is the group email. So let's say I got an application and maybe something's happening. I need to notify people, like maybe the call is closing suddenly, or we've made a change to something. So I can go in here and I can click on several records and I go to group email, and I can make an ad hoc email from here to send it to people related to this record. Now we've always been able to do things like, let's say I want to notify the financial officer associated with this record. But what we added in this upgrade were these two over here, the primary contacts. And the primary contacts are people that are designated within the organizations that are associated to this application. So you can designate one person as a primary contact, and then you can actually email them from here. So it's like, hey, I want to make sure that this person at that organization always knows about all the information going out regarding their grants. So that's a new addition there. If you're using the multiple address functionality, where one user can have multiple addresses set up, we've added a standard field to control the permission around which addresses they can pick when they're filling those in. The autoloader, if your autoloader, maybe you have an HR feed that's going in every day or something like that, some type of change that's happening through the autoloader, we've just updated the email settings and added some more functionality here. So for example, now I can send an email off to whoever initiated the autoloader, and then I can also send emails off to specific email addresses. And so I can put a comma separated list of email addresses here, and then I can pick what kinds of emails I want those people to receive. So for example, if I want to just have an email when it's complete, I can just check that one. But if I really want to know if it just fails, I can do that one. And if I want to know if there's failed records, I can do that one, or any combination. It'll send a single email to each of those people with what condition was met. This is just a quality of life improvement. So in a lot of areas, such as the report builder, when you're and autoloaders, when you're selecting custom fields, for example, there's now a search and select. So what I do is I just start typing, I get a filtered list of all the custom fields, and I select the one I want. So again, quality of life there. Let's take a look at invitations for a second. So if I go into invitations, I don't know if everyone has used invitations, but it's a nice way to get people to come in and collaborate on an application. So I can come here to invitations, for example, and I can add someone manually that I want them to come in and contribute to this application. It sends them off an email, and then they can accept or decline and give a reasoning for why they maybe have a conflict of interest and they won't participate, or why they will participate. And you can bring them in to collaborate with you on this application. And we've always had this, but one thing we've added now is a duplicate check here. So if my list is long of people I've invited and maybe I didn't notice, I add a new one, it'll tell me that, hey, you already sent an invite to this person, they already declined. So again, just a kind of a nice thing. The last thing around security that we've done here is when someone changes their email, because emails are used typically for login and are semi-unique. When they change the email in the system, a notification now is going to go out to that user. So if someone comes in and changes my email, for example, I'm going to get a notification. It's going to tell me that my email was changed, and essentially, if I did it, I can disregard. But if it wasn't me, I should contact my my system administrator. So that's an automatic notification that goes out to the old email when an email is changed. So those are the things that are going to happen automatically. Let's talk about some things that you can opt into. The first one, and I'll just show you how this works, is we've created a new uploader component. So this would be used throughout the system. Right now it's an opt-in, but I'll show you how it works. So this is a beta feature now. You can turn it on maybe on your backup, or if you have a test server or something like that, you can try to give us some feedback. But eventually the plan is to replace our current one with the new one. So in the current uploader, wherever you are in the system, you want to upload, there's typically a button you would press that would open up a modal window. And then I would get something like this, where I can click to add the files, browse files, or I can drag and drop. With the new uploader, it appears right in line, and I can take a file, I can drop it in, it loads up, and then I see that file right here below. So it's a new uploader that's in beta now, so you can try it out. You can go, I'll show you where to go turn it on if you're interested in trying it. It's right here, enable new file uploader beta for branding, and you're welcome to try it out. And eventually we do plan to release this to everyone, but we'll give you lots of notification before that happens. Here's another one that I think is quite good. So let's say we'll use our two-factor authentication as an example. Let's say that I create a brand new role for the people that I want to give a multi-factor authentication to. Then what I can do, now I've got this new role, applying that to each user would have been very laborious. But what I can do now is I can select the users I want to add it to, and then I can come into the batch update, and I now have the ability to add a role. So I can add that two-factor role to those people. So I can add roles in batch to many users. So this is new. Same thing with organizations. I can add a category to many users in batch now through the batch update. So that's very helpful. The thing to note here is I can only add a role. I'm not taking any roles away. I'm not swapping roles out. It's just an add roles. But if you've got a new role you want to add to multiple people, that's very handy. The hashtag library, if you've never used that before, it's a way that people can self-classify. They can self-classify all the records, and then they can search it in a list view, for example. The thing is managing the hashtag library, where it showed all the hashtags and making changes in there, was only available to global admins. So in this release, we've added the ability now to go to the hashtag library from the menu icon if you desire. There's a role-based permission around whether that shows up and whether people have access. But roles other than global admins can now make use of hashtags. And I'll just show you real quick. Excuse me. So if I went to this, I have a list view here with some hashtags, and let's say I went art, I can search on that hashtag and I can pull those records up that are all been tagged with the art. All right. A few notes for administrators. I don't want to go too far into this, but just to let you know, we do have an integration now, and we have the infrastructure to support integrating with different AIs. We were testing with, I saw some testing with the OpenAI, for example. So this has got some really good potential for productivity within the system. I'm not going to go too far into it. There will be communications and announcements and things coming. The one thing I just want to draw your attention to, because it is a change that you may see, is that if I go into a record and I go into configuration mode, which we use to edit things very quickly and easily. So I go in here to Tools, Configuration Mode. There's a thing over here called the Variable Syntax Helper. And typically this is used when people are maybe creating a web page view or something like that, and they want to test out their syntax maybe. So for example, here I'm going to say, I want to see what my name would be. And if I put that in a web page view, that variable shows me the name of this record. So creating wonder and beauty. Great. What was changed here is that we've added some help to the screen. So if you are doing any of this kind of troubleshooting or configuration through here, we've added SS calculation and SS logic, which gives you some information about how you can set these things up to control what you want to display. Now, if you opt into using the new AI integration, it is a paid fee, but you will see a new tab here as well. It talks about some of the things you can do and gives you some examples, such as rewriting, fixing the spelling in an application, or rewriting maybe a grant summary, or a declination letter with pulling in some information, like a personalized letter, pulling in some information from the grant, for example. So all that stuff's in there. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about that because I know there will be press releases and communications about it. But in the variable processor, there's going to be some new tabs with help. The last thing I really wanted to just draw attention to was a smart check validation. So when you submit, I'll just open this up. When you submit an application, sometimes you want to use some complex criteria to validate against, in which case you would use the smart check validation. We've updated the error messaging around this just to kind of make it a little better, easier to read, and such. We've also updated the examples on the wiki. There was a link there. And the one thing I noticed a lot of times from people, and it's not something you have to change, but a lot of times I saw some people using single quotes where double quotes were expected. So all these examples on the wiki have been updated if you're using smart check validation. So without any further ado, I think let's go to questions and see what people
Thanks, Mark. That was great. So I'm going to try to go in order from what we talked about. So MFA being the first one. So one of the questions that came in was for MFA, does this apply to outside users such as our applicants?
Yes, based on whatever you have in that setting, it will apply to. So that's internal and external. So if you don't want your externals people to have to see that, that's fine. You just come in here and make sure that there's at least one role in here, and that role is not given to your external users. And it's that setting right there.
Okay, perfect. Another MFA question is, for the MFA, are there standard correspondences established to help existing users establish this, or do the organizations need to create those emails on their own?
Let me just jump into the wiki article. So everything is already kind of pre-set up. So there's nothing that needs to be done to my knowledge. It depends on which one you're using, of course. There's the time-based one, in which case, if they're using the time-based one, when I recommend for more internal super users, then they do have to install an authenticator app. But if I come down here and you'll see, there's actually instructions. The screen will come up with instructions and show you how to do that. If it's the verification code via email, and this is how you reset it. If it's the verification code via email, this is where the permission is to be able to reset the TOTP. But okay, sorry. But if it's the verification code for email, so this one, the one that's going to be everyone, basically once they put their username and password in, they're just going to get an email that says, "Hey, here's your verification code," and that again, that's already pre-set up. Okay. And then they'll get the screen right here where they can put that verification code in, and then they hit submit, and it says right here, you can see it's like, "Hey, we sent the verification to your email. If you don't see the email, check your junk and spam folder," and then they can resend the code if they want. And again, the text messaging is available, but that's a paid service. So if you haven't opted into that, then they'll just see the resend code by email.
Perfect. So actually speaking on that that code you were talking about, so is the code solely in English? A question came in around that, or is there a translation option? It
will be translated. If it is not now, it will be. And it should be sent in the language of the user.
Okay.
So if there's a missing translation, you can use the translation library or contact support, and we'll make sure we add that.
Okay, another question surrounding the verification codes. Is there a limit to how many can go out per day, or that one individual can request?
Kind of yes and no. So let me answer that in a roundabout way. So you can send as many as you want during the day, but there are certain settings that can control this. So for example, I believe, so here, for example, on account lockout, there is a number of failed attempts. So if they send the code and they try it and it doesn't work, that would count against your failed attempts. So then they may have to wait the 5-minute duration. So they might get locked out after trying it 3 times and then have to wait 5 minutes to try it again. Likewise, if they kind of hit resend over and over and over again real quick, eventually the system will be like, "Hey, you got to wait a minute or two." before it'll send it. And we do that for security because we're just trying to stop bad actors from trying to brute force their way in. So again, under account lock-in, you can kind of control how often they get locked out and for how long they get locked out. And I guess while we're on that, you can see the locked out users here as well. If you want to see in your system if people are getting locked out, it's right there. So again, that's all under password and activation policies. Good question.
Perfect. And I think we have one more question surrounding MFA, and then we'll move on to the other ones. So an organization has a related activity deadline on March 9th. Assuming their dedicated server will be updated on March 9th, they don't want to enable MFA yet, and they want to know if it's an option to enable it afterwards. So I think this goes back to the solution of putting a role in previously.
Yeah. So if you don't want anything to happen here, make a role and just put it in here for now, and then after the upgrade, change it to whatever you want, and then that way there'll be no changes to your system. It's only if this bottom one here is left empty that a change is going to happen. All right, so if that's left empty, it'll be switched to everyone, assuming that, you know, if that's what you want. If that's not what you want, then you need to put at least one role in here and then change it after the fact.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like we have one more question coming about MFA. It says most of our users log in through single sign-on. Can I just enable the bypass MFA toggle and not worry about the necessary settings dedicated on the MFA role?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, if you just do that, if all your users are only using SSO and you've toggled that on, you don't have to do anything. Personally, I mean, that's up to you. Yeah, and you could always still put a role in here just for fun, but yeah, that should be fine.
Okay, so moving on to another question unrelated to MFA, where it says enable default from address. If we can go back to that.
Yeah, sure.
The question is, can this be our organization's general email?
Sorry. So
to enable the default from address.
Oh, default from address. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
If this can be the general, the organization's general email address.
We're talking about this. I believe it can be. It depends. If you're using SMTP relay, then I'm assuming it can be that because that's your domain. If you're not using SMTP relay, it may have to come from the domain that it's being sent from. You may have to try that because I'm not 100% sure, but typically it would come from the domain it's being sent from. In this case, it would be coming from my domain. But if I'm using SMTP relay, and it could be whatever your normal email is, if that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mark. And it looks like we have one last question in regards to the release notes to say that you can add a note to your system security report to explain, for example, high-risk flags. If we can go over that. Yeah.
So good question. So here I am. I'm in global settings system, and you can see we have all of our things here: the performance, the system security summary, which is what we're talking about here. The first thing I talked about was the notes. So I'll go over that in a second. This is where the global administrators is located. So on the notes here, you can see I've got an old UTA that is a legacy application I shouldn't have, and so I've added a note here. So I can go here and click this. And then I can add a note like, this will be resolved on, June, whatever, right? Sure. And I can save it, and I can see the history of all my notes here, and the last note will show up here. So basically, you can see what's flagged, whether it's high, medium, or low item in the summary, and then I can add a note as to maybe why I haven't resolved it, or why we're going to resolve it, or maybe we want to leave it for some reason, etc. That's where you do the notes. And we do have this button here, which you can help you jump to the related area where you would go to fix this, or at least see it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mark. That looks like that was all the questions for today. So I just want to thank everyone for taking some time out of your day to be with us today. And as a reminder, this was being recorded, so you will have a copy sent to your email afterwards, as well as this will be uploaded to our YouTube. And with that, we hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you.